I do mention that we lived in a van for several years, and so the question I get asked is, why did you actually decide to do that? Why did you move out of a house? Why did you move out into a van? And as I've been thinking about this, I thought I would share on here because I've never actually shared the reasoning behind what we did. And I'll see if I can dig out some photographs as well. I don't have any video footage because it was in days before I was vlogging. I did actually blog, so I kept a blog about it, but I will definitely dip back into my photos and see if I can share some key moments with you as I'm telling the story. So a teeny bit of backstory then. We were living in a really nice semi-detached 3-bedroomed house. It was our dream house, if you like, and it had a really nice big garden, and we had a greenhouse, and so with that we were working 24/7 basically to pay a ridiculous amount of mortgage, which most of all at that point, most of it was actually directed at interest payments for the bank. And we had a 5-year fixed rate. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. But as we went through that period of 5 years, our mindset and viewpoint of all that was changing, moving forwards. And we really got interested in things like permaculture and off-grid living and that kind of thing. At that point, got really into van life and vans. And so instead of taking our tent to the festivals, we had a really teeny tiny van, which was a Mercedes Vito. So you couldn't stand up in it. It was basically just when the bed was up, it was a bed inside. But it had a teeny tiny kitchen, and that was about it. So it was perfect for festies, if you like. Yeah, I guess through doing that, we met lots of different types of people who were doing alternative kind of things and living alternative lifestyles. And so at first we were really attracted to being off-grid, maybe doing our own build, straw bale or something like that. And so as we were coming to the end of our fixed rate mortgage situation, it basically meant that we were trapped in unless we paid an awful lot of money to get us out of the mortgage. So we kind of signed ourselves in for those 5 years and stuck with that. But once that period was coming to an end, we kind of felt, I don't know, it was like an itch for freedom, away from this big payment every month. And I was teaching full-time at that time, which is a really absorbing job. So if you're a teacher out there, I take my hat off to you. I know how stressful and time consuming that whole thing is. And so I was beginning to burn out, in all honesty. Yeah, things were kind of lining up, if you like. And we were also both hitting our Uranus opposition, which is kind of the time where you kind of have this midlife crisis, as they call it in common terms. And if you're not into the astrology part of it, but it is actually your Uranus opposition. And it's kind of the point in time where you feel like change and rebelling and switching things all around. So that all added up to this situation. So all this was brewing under the surface, and we were trying to decide what to do. And we'd looked at a few little cottages to rent nearby. And James said to me one day, I wonder how you'd feel if we put all our stuff in storage and ran away in our van. And so that's how the idea was born. And then we weighed everything up with lists and pieces of paper and lots of discussions, and we'd take a flask of tea out on a nature walk with our notepads and really think things through. But wildly and spontaneously, in a way, I suppose for friends and family, some friends and family were a bit shocked, I think. It seemed quite a sudden decision, but we really did think about it carefully, and we decided we wanted to make the jump. So the part of the process that was getting the house ready for sale, decluttering, selling a load of stuff, putting a load of stuff in storage, all that was a lot of work. But in the end, when we actually put the house on the market, it sold within 6 days to the first person that came to look around, because it was such a pretty house, really beautiful. But we were ready to let it go. And yes, we loved it, and yes, it was sad, but we were ready and happy to let it go. So all that happened really, really quickly, and we ended up the first night in a hotel. And I remember looking out the window, and we were on the ground floor, and I remember seeing rabbits outside on the grass outside the hotel window. And it was just one of those budget hotels. And we'd been to the supermarket to get some snacks. And yeah, we were kind of a little bit in shock, I think, about what we'd just done. And I've probably missed a load of stuff, which maybe you've been wondering. So if that's the case, then leave a question down below and I'll try and answer as many as I can. Moving on into van life then. So we decided to go abroad. And the reason we decided to go abroad was because it was just getting into the colder weather in the UK. It was September, October time. And so we headed up north to stay at my mum's. We actually stayed in her caravan for a few weeks because James had a project. And so he needed consistent internet, and it was quite a big project. And we were going abroad, so we wanted to kind of go and see friends and family before we disappeared. So one of the places we went was to my mum's, and then, yeah, lived in her caravan. So James finished his project, and then we basically saw other friends and family on our travels and headed to France via the ferry October time. And the first destination that we were heading to was Paris. And actually that's the only destination we had on the map. We just thought we'd plan it and plot it on the way because we wanted to have slow travel and to actually absorb places and experiences and cultures and foods and things like that without having a plan. So we called it the no plan plan. And those early days were really exciting. It was freeing, it was wild, it was enjoyable, it was fun, it was super tiring and a little bit scary at times as well because we just were heading out into the unknown. So it wasn't like having a holiday or anything like that because we didn't have that home base. And I had no idea at that point how not having a home base to return to and having that space where our stuff was, you know, even if we'd rented it out or something like that, I had no idea at that point how that would impact and affect me in not a good way, if you like. It wasn't good for me at all. Anyway, that first leg of our travels, we actually travelled through France after spending some time in Paris, and we took our bikes, and so we cycled around Paris and we had a lovely time, and it started to get cold. And so we found some Airbnbs that we fancied in Italy that looked really, really nice. And we were heading to Italy because we wanted to have some warm weather and be at the coast. And James also had another project. So we were trying to stop at Airbnbs and time it so that James had that time with consistent internet and consistent living space, if you like. Because at this point in van number 1, which was Dom, he was tiny. So you couldn't stand up, there was no fridge, no bathroom, so you couldn't live. It was good for travel, but not living in. So we were looking at budget Airbnbs, and because it was low season, places were a bit cheaper as well. So the time of year helped us out. Yeah, so we travelled to the Alps and then into Italy and ended up on the east coast of Italy, about halfway down, and stayed at a lovely Airbnb for a few weeks. And then after exploring a little bit more south in Italy, which is absolutely beautiful, we realised how weary and exhausted we both felt. And so we decided, I'm not sure how we decided this, maybe we found another Airbnb that looked really, really cute, but we decided to head to Greece with the plan of spending a little bit of time in Athens for James to do some more work, and also head towards Crete. And I've got really happy creative memories of Athens because it was a wonderful place, really inspiring for an artist, and it was the first time I got my art kit out. And in actual fact, I found this the other day, and it's a little vintage vanity suitcase, and it's empty at the moment. But that was, it's a bit creaky, but that was my art kit, and anything that fitted in there was what I took with me. And so this place in Athens, it was like a little studio apartment, and I'll try and find a photograph as well of it. But this was the first place I actually unpacked my little art kit and did some drawing and some painting as well. So once we got to Crete after that, we fell in love with Crete, and we ended up staying there for 5 months, I think. So the whole time of being in Greece was 6 months. We loved Greece. It was absolutely wonderful. The people were amazing. The food was fantastic. Everything tasted so beautiful. All the vegetables and fruits tasted like they're supposed to taste. That sounds a bit loopy, but I think you know what I mean. You go to the supermarket and things just don't have flavour unless you can splash out and buy the organic stuff. Everything was so tasty and so delicious. And then we had to go back to the UK. We wanted to see relatives, friends and family, but also there's a rule that if you have a vehicle, it needs to have an MOT, an inspection and a test, if you like. And you have to do that every 12 months. So we'd been away, I think 10 months at this point. And so we had to go back and get all that paperwork and stuff on the van renewed. Now, I won't go into as much detail on the rest of the travels because, as I say, we travelled for several years, so that would take me a good few hours to go into all the stories and stuff. I don't think we've got that kind of time. But suffice to say, after catching up with friends and family after that first leg of the trip, if you like, we headed to Spain. And we decided, instead of paying out for Airbnbs, we looked into house sitting. And so this was the next thing we did, and we did lots of house sits, and we looked for longer term ones in locations that looked really interesting. And also we had online meetings, if you like, with owners, and so you could really tell who you'd get on with and that kind of thing. So we had some lovely offers off some really lovely people, and we ended up, the first house sit we went to was Valencia in Spain, and so that was where we headed. And we stayed there for 3 months. And within that time, I must just mention as well that we upsized the van quite dramatically. So while we were in the UK, we rented a house for a short period of time. We went through all our storage stuff. We downsized everything. We had car boot sales and charity shop drops and all sorts of things to really, really get that stuff down. And we also sold our little van and bought a bigger van, and James wanted to kit it out. So we kind of bought most of the stuff to kit it out with, like a solar panel and the fridge that went with that, and a load of wood and insulation and all the stuff you need to kit out a van. But James hadn't kitted it out yet, and so he did the bare minimum that we had time for, because the allocated time in the rental property that we were in was running out. So we took all the stuff with us, and it was really comedy, that trip, getting down to Valencia, because the van was full of stuff and we obviously had to live in it as well. So I think I had a bare minimum requirement of needs, as in I didn't want to have like bare van walls. I wanted it insulated in where I was sleeping, and then we just strung up some fabrics. We didn't have curtains, and really improvised, and it was fun and exciting, and it was great because we could stand up in that van, and we had a plan to put a little bathroom in there as well, which James did, and also he built a fantastic kitchen with a larder and all sorts. So it was a big upgrade for us, and felt like a different level of van life. And we still had bicycles as well, which were on the back, on a rack on the back of the van, so that was fun. And we loved Spain and we loved Valencia, and it was a great house. It was perfect. It was a really good introduction to a bigger van and to house sitting. And during that stay, James pretty much finished the conversion on that van. Then we got offered another house sit in Portugal. So we headed all around the coastline of Spain. We went south and then we went west into Portugal, crossed the border. We enjoyed the south coast of Portugal before heading north and inland into our next house sit. And it was fantastic. It was so beautiful, but at the same time it was 44 degrees every day, really, really hot, right in the middle of Portugal. So we managed our time by doing our sort of house sit chores, because it was kind of like a holiday accommodation. And so there were 4 apartments and we had to kind of water the gardens and we didn't have to do a lot. We didn't have to prepare the rooms or anything like that, but just look after the gardens and be around, really. And so we used to get up really, really early in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock, when it was still bearable. And yeah, we learned how to manage the heat in that house sit, but it was so, so beautiful. We loved Portugal. And then after that, because we loved Portugal so much, we had a look round for land or a sort of dilapidated property that we could renovate on a little bit of land. And we searched and searched, and we visited quite a lot of people who were doing a similar thing, and we didn't find anywhere. And so we headed home after a year. So we had 6 months in Spain, 6 months in Portugal, needed to go back to do the van thing again, and we headed for home to see friends and family and regroup, really. Yeah, regroup. I guess the final part of the story sort of takes us through quite a few years of living in the UK in a van. And at this point, we did a downsizing of our stuff again and got rid of loads and loads more, and actually took what was left to one of my sister's houses, who stored it in her house and then in her basement area. And so that was really fortunate. And so we didn't have that financial outlay anymore, which was good. We also changed our van because in the UK, we found that we needed more space because the weather wasn't as conducive for living a lot outside, if you like. So we spent the rest of our savings on this vintage Heimer. And so our bigger van was called Big Vic, and this Heimer was called Helmut. And I'll try again and put pictures up for you. That helped a lot because we had more space in the van and a proper kind of dinette area, and the little bedroom at the back had even a little sort of slidey door. It had a proper shower. And yeah, we ended up, I think we did a couple more house sits as well in that time, long-term ones, 3-month ones, 2 of those, and there was one in North Wales and one in South Wales, and they were both wonderful. And we looked for cottages in Wales in case we wanted to move into a cottage. We love Wales. It does rain a lot though, so we found that was a little bit of a drawback for us. We house hunted quite a lot. We didn't find anything until we moved a little bit further south, and so very slowly but surely we started putting down tentative routes. And yeah, the rest is history, if you like. Yeah, finding a studio. So I've been at my studio now for 4 years. I haven't been in this room for 4 years, but I've been here for 4 years. And that became a really big part of us putting roots down again. And it felt so, so good. I think maybe one of the things you're wondering was, you know, what was so difficult about van life, because maybe it sounds idyllic. And I think, you know, when you look through rosy-coloured specs at it, freedom and travel, and it feels like a real kind of carefree, free spirit kind of lifestyle. And it is all those things, definitely, absolutely, without a doubt. But it's also unsettling when you haven't got a base. And it felt really weird to have a load of stuff in storage and little bits of stuff in the van. And then when it's all in the van tucked away, sometimes you can't be bothered to get it out. And so, for example, art kit, it just felt like, I mean, you've seen how messy I am and how much stuff I have. And so it was really hard sometimes to keep creative. You know, some of the self-care and comforts became quite challenging as well. and living in a small space with another person, you certainly get to know each other. That's, yeah, with a given. And so it was a good job we got on so well, because, yeah, living in close quarters with someone else, it can be challenging, because obviously sometimes you want some time on your own. And so, yeah, there was loads of things like that. You know, having enough water, for example, to wash my hair. So I didn't wash my hair that often. You know, like Lady Moon times as well, that was an issue. And not a huge issue, but everything's harder work. Everything takes longer. Everything needs a little bit of extra planning. And so what we found, particularly me, is we became exhausted from doing all that extra stuff. And we missed having roots down and being in one spot. And so that's how that came about. And I think in conclusion, just to finish off the story, if I think about now, what's interesting is that I've really nested in my studio. I've really settled in. I don't know if you can tell, but you know, I've got my plant babies, I've got a mess everywhere, a working mess. And I get my stuff done. I'm very productive most of the time, and I really enjoy having all my stuff, even though I'm fairly minimal, as much as I can be anyway. And I am feeling a big declutter coming on for the spring, I have to say, so that's brewing. But at the same time at home, we're really, really minimalist. I mean, to the point where we haven't even put any pictures up. So I've hung fairy lights, and I've got a few plant babies at home, and I do have a couple of like photographs in frames standing on things, on surfaces, but no actual pictures on the wall. Even in our kitchen, we hardly have any pots at all. And when my daughter and son-in-law came to stay a couple of weeks ago, when we were dog sitting the little puppy, my granddog's son, but I was preparing a curry, you know, for them coming, and I didn't really have a pot big enough because I haven't upgraded my pot from being in the van. And so everything's kind of van-sized still. And my daughter kept saying to me, "You're not in the van anymore, Mum. You can have a proper," you know, whatever it was that she'd sort of discovered. You know, we had just enough plates and just enough cups. And so it's really interesting how we've transitioned and how we're still transitioning really, really slowly. And so I think it was about 7 years between leaving the house and actually finding somewhere proper to live again. So all this ramble and all this storytelling has come about because I've been thinking about our anniversary coming up in the flat for 3 years. That's what it is. So it's good to reminisce, and I think in last week's video we did this, didn't we, where we used photographs in our journals and looked back and did some storytelling and some gratitude to heal our story and review our challenges and acknowledge hardships and difficulties as well as the joyful parts as well. And it's really important to just sort of have a little bit of time to do that, isn't it? And then that helps us move forward into who and where we want to be. And when I say who, I mean the best version of ourselves, or the next better version of ourselves, if you like, with the lessons that we've learned along the way. And so new moon in Pisces, very dreamy, and I'm reminiscing about the past and also seeing how far I've come on this journey. And I think it's really nice to remember that, you know, sometimes we're not where we want to be right now, and we wish we were there, you know, over there somewhere, and wherever that is. And we forget to acknowledge and celebrate and pat ourselves on the back and be grateful for experiences that we've had along the journey. And so again, it comes down to doing it for the process. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey, as they say. So I suppose, after all that, was it Wendy waffly? I hope it wasn't too much. But after all that, I better get on with some work, actually. And I think I need to have a little tidy up as well first. So I'll get on with that. And thank heavens the heating's back on as well today. And before I go as well, if you are on my Instagram and you left a comment on the Instagram post I put up this week about my flower paintings, and with painting every petal having an intention of peace, sending peace out there. And I had so many comments on that post, and I loved reading them, and I've answered as many as I can. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for those, because it was really heartwarming and gave me goosebumps as well. We don't want to get all political on here, but there is stuff going on in the world, as we know, and it's good to acknowledge it and then react to it in the best way that we know how, isn't it? So anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching and listening and keeping me company. I hope you have a really, really good week. Try to keep your lights shining bright, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now. Bye for now.
You could see yourself